Welcome everyone to Facebook Live, and it is really a pleasure to welcome all of you all to this version of It Starts With Mom Live from California. And I'm Stacy Stewart. I'm not actually in California, but our guest is. I'm really excited about that. We are doing this amazing series, It Starts With Mom Live, to really engage all of you all in an amazing conversation about moms, working moms, being pregnant, being a new mom and working, and all of those really tough challenges and amazing challenges that a lot of us experience in our lives. And we are so, so pleased to introduce an amazing guest for you to hear her story and really to engage in the conversation. So this is one of those moments when we really want to hear from you. And just want to say from the outset, if you're joining us, welcome again. Please use the comments to ask questions as we go through this conversation for the next hour or so. We can definitely take your questions and definitely respond to things that you hear and give us your feedback as well. We would love to hear it. Before we get into it, I want to also just say thank you to, I think, one of our National Board of Trustees members that's joining us, Mohammed Shahzad, who really helped us launch It Starts With Mom in his role. And we're so grateful and pleased that I think he's joining, and if you're on, Mohammed, great to have you on as well. Look, we know how challenging this has been for so many of us, every one of us, in fact, through this pandemic, through so much unrest going on in the country, just so much happening every single day. It's hard to imagine how when times were more, quote unquote, normal as compared to what they're like now. And we want to just give a shout out to everyone that's sort of making their way through this crisis that we're in, especially this pandemic, and especially to the moms, especially to women who are pregnant and still trying to work and hold down everything at home and at work. It's really a big challenge. You know, we're facing an urgent crisis in this country, not because of the pandemic alone. Even before the pandemic, we were facing a major maternal and infant health crisis in this country. In fact, the US today is considered the most dangerous developed nation in the world in which to give birth, which is really shocking and just incredible to think about. But it's true. Here in the US, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, where we spend the most money on healthcare, we get some of the worst health outcomes, worst health results for moms and babies, especially moms and babies of color. And that's what the March of Dimes is all about, trying to address making sure that every mom is healthy, that every baby is strong. And we do that in a number of ways, through research, through advocacy, through programs, and we do a lot to reach out to individual women like many of you, to make sure that you have the tools, the information, the credible resources that you need to make sure that you can maintain your health before, during, and after pregnancy, and to make sure your baby is healthy as well. So one of the things that we're going to talk about in this discussion, this It Starts With Mom live discussion, is really address some of the big challenges that moms and babies face today. And to do that, I'm just so pleased and honored to introduce our guest, who's going to share a little bit about her story. And then we're going to have a conversation about what it's like today for working moms, and especially moms where pregnancies maybe haven't gone as expected. So joining me today is Fiji Simo, who is the Vice President and head of the Facebook app. I don't know how many of you all are on Facebook every day. I'm on the Facebook app probably every single day. And it's really an honor to meet Fiji, who is responsible for it all and makes it all happen. Fiji has joined Facebook in 2011. She's made video an essential part of the Facebook app. And she's done all kinds of incredible things to make that app, you know, an essential part of our lives, our everyday lives. I don't know what I would do if I weren't able to connect with my friends and family around the country and around the world if it weren't for the Facebook app. So how appropriate is it that we would have on Facebook Live, the head of the Facebook app, and maybe some of you are watching this right now from the Facebook app. So you have Fiji to thank for that. We are just grateful for our ability to host these live events, these virtual events on the Facebook platform. Fiji is an amazing leader. She was recognized as by Fortune as part of their 40 under 40 annual ranking of the most influential young people in business. She ranked second on Fast Company's 2017 list of most creative people in business. and 10th most influential French person in the world by Vanity Fair, which is I know a particularly great honor that she values so much. She's a strong advocate for women in leadership roles. She serves on the board of Women in Product, which is a nonprofit that she started to help women reach leadership positions in product management. Fidji grew up in the south of France, which was why I was referencing how proud I know she must be for being recognized among all French people for her leadership. She now lives in California, though, with her husband and her daughter. And Fidji, I am really honored to introduce you to this audience, and really just to have you as such an incredible woman to join in this conversation so that we can really talk about what it's really like to be an incredible business leader, to be a mom, to be a wife, to have a conversation on what all those challenges look like on a daily basis, even for someone like you. And so just thank you for joining today. Thank you for all that you do to make our lives a little better at Facebook, I think. Why don't you share a little bit about your journey in pregnancy, what challenges you face? I know you've got a really important story to share. So why don't we just start there and then tell the audience about yourself and your pregnancy journey and your journey as a mom.
Well, thank you so much, Stacey, for having me. It's such an honor, and thank you for everything you and your organization do for moms and babies everywhere. As you know, it's been quite a journey for me, and your organization has helped so much. So I'm incredibly grateful and happy to be here. So in terms of sharing my story, sadly, I think it's becoming quite a common story of, having a pretty difficult journey towards having a healthy baby. And so it started in 2011, where I had a miscarriage, and I was very, very traumatic in my case because, as I was telling you when we were catching up, I learned about the fact that my pregnancy wasn't viable from a voicemail from the nurse at my doctor's, who had called me right before the office was closing. So I had this absolutely devastating news and had to, sob on the parking lot while waiting for my husband to pick me up, and had to have, a DNC the day after. So that was actually really, really hard, and also not really having any answers on, the fact that I had for many years incredibly painful periods, and not knowing really if I had endometriosis or not, and not finding in the medical system, great support. And so that prompted me to actually wait a number of years before trying to get pregnant again. And I found a wonderful OBGYN who immediately diagnosed me with endometriosis and PCOS, but told me that, I could try and see if I could get pregnant. And I got lucky the second time to get pregnant quite fast. But very quickly, we realized that, at around the first month, I was having incredible bleeding. After 3 months, I was starting to have atrocious contractions. And at that point, we realized that I had both an incompetent cervix and an irritable uterus. And I always joke that in one session, they managed to insult 2 of my cherished organs. And the name of these conditions has to be invented by men, because why would we call a cervix incompetent?
Exactly.
Irritable. I mean, it's just not nice. So that led to having to have surgery and a cerclage placed, which is deeply unpleasant, and then 5 months of bed rest, which was, incredibly difficult because I was at risk of losing my baby any day, and I was literally counting the days. I had gone to your website and memorized all of the milestones that my baby needed to hit, from viability to, all of the chances of survival. And thankfully, through a lot of support, through spending the last months of my pregnancy at the hospital, she made it to 36 weeks and 6 days, and she's fully healthy. So I'm very, very lucky. But throughout that journey, I encountered a lot of moms who weren't as lucky, didn't have the support that I had. And that made me realize that, this journey that is so hard on so many moms, because my case is not an isolated case by any means, is so hard that we just need ways to support women during this time. And even after pregnancy, you know, like my pregnancy actually triggered a chronic illness called POTS, and like no one was there to really help me recover from, you know, what was really devastating on my body. And so I do think that what you're tackling is so critical, and I'm just honored to be a part of your mission.
Well, you really had an incredible journey, and you know, it's really shocking. I mean, the first time when, you know, when you said we were catching up on this, and I was, you know, when you talked about your miscarriage and how you found out about it through voicemail at the end of the day, when you couldn't reach anybody back to get more information, must have been really devastating. And I just can't imagine what you went through. And I'm so glad you told that part of your story, because it is the story of so many women, and it's so hard to tell those stories. And it's something that we absolutely want to encourage. If women are able to talk and share those stories, it can be so healing to them, but it also can be so helpful to other women. So thank you for sharing that part of your story. Let me just ask another. Oh, go ahead.
Quickly, I think, you know, the thing you're saying about sharing your story is so important, because when that happened, I didn't know of a single other woman that had had a miscarriage. So I felt incredibly lonely. And it's only after having had the procedure, you know, 2 days later, I literally passed out at work from having lost a lot of blood. And one of my coworkers caught me, and she was like, "Oh, you passed out. Are you pregnant?" And I just started crying, because if there's one thing I knew I wasn't, it's really being pregnant. And so I told her what happened. And she told me, "Oh, that happened to me too. Like, don't worry, it gets better." And it was, you know, really interesting, because it was still very hush hush. It was very much like, "We don't talk about this, but okay, you're in a tough spot. I'm gonna let you know." And that made me realize, wow, I never want another woman to go through that. And I want them to know that they can reach out to me. And so I didn't talk about it immediately, because it's obviously hard, but I actually posted on Facebook a couple of months afterwards to talk about it. And within 2 months, a friend of mine that I didn't know particularly well, but we had been in touch, had a similar experience. And that night she was able to call me and tell me, like, help me get through this, like, what's happening, what do I do, how is that going to work? And I think that's like incredibly important, to be there for others. So I agree with you on encouraging women to tell their story, even though it's insanely hard.
It is insanely hard. You know, so one of the things you're pointing out is, I mean, obviously the March of Dimes was there for you with a bunch of information and resources, and we'd like to think we're there, and we hope we're there for many other women who find themselves in very challenging situations the way you did. But it also sounds like that support was really important. Are there some other things that you think that you can, as you think back now on your miscarriage or pregnancy, that you wish you had known then, or information or resources that you wish you had had then, that you think might have been helpful to you during that time?
You know, I think communities of women who have gone through the same thing is actually really critical. And this whole experience has actually been a big part of even my professional life, because a big part of what I do within the Facebook app is lead Facebook groups, which is a way for communities to be built around things that they have in common. And we see a lot of them built around, obviously, parenting in general, but also pregnancy, also like conditions that affect moms in particular. And I do think that feeling like you're not alone, feeling like you're going through this with a group of women that have survived that and have made it, and seeing some hope, is actually incredibly important. So I think that's one very big piece. The second thing is enlisting support around you. And, you know, I have my pride, and I think a lot of women are the same, where we don't like asking for help. And for me, one of the devastating thing of bed rest was like, I literally could not stand, because like my cerclage, we really didn't know if it was going to hold. So like the doctor had been clear that like I would stand just to get a shower once every couple of days, but that was it. And I couldn't even make a sandwich for myself. So asking for help from people around you, having the vulnerability to say, this is a tough moment in my life. And, you know, I had to call my mom and tell her, like, Mom, like, do you think you can fly in and stay with me in California for 3 months? And, you know, every part of
from the south of France, right?
and you know, every part of my being as a strong, independent woman did not want to do that. But
right.
But I think that was critical to recognize, I can't do this alone. I'm gonna need a tribe here, and that the courage of having that vulnerability, which, you know, sometimes we think vulnerability is opposed to courage, but I think you need a lot of courage to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Has actually helped a lot, and I saw that even at work with my team, where, you know, I continued working through like a video conference while on bed rest. And this actually prepared me very well for working through a pandemic. But,
yes.
But, you know, I had to be very vulnerable with my team as well and tell them, like, I'm not going to be the perfectly put together leader that you're accustomed to. You know, I used to be on like high heels like that. And like when you see me lying down in bed with no makeup and greasy hair, that's not going to look the same. But I'm going to have to show you that side of me, because I want to continue leading and I want to continue working through this. And that's what's
Sure.
about me. And so that was actually really helpful to be clear on what I needed and figure out how to one time put myself first and my baby first.
Well, good for you. And it was good that you came to that realization and allowed yourself to be that vulnerable and that courageous, right? To ask for help. But you touched on something that's really important. I mean, you were working through all this, and you talked about your team and your, you know, having to be really upfront and honest with your team about what you're really going through. Sounds like they were incredibly supportive. Talk about what other support, what did it feel like? What kind of support did Facebook as your employer provide you? And, you know, how did it really work out? Because, you know, unfortunately, we still have too many women in various workplaces who really sometimes when they're pregnant don't feel supported. And, you know, this is a big issue. Even there are still issues of discrimination in the workplace around women that are pregnant. And you know, unfortunately, even when things don't go well for the woman, she's not often given the support that she needs to maintain her health and the health of her baby. So talk about what that support looked like from Facebook, from the company overall, from your team. What kind of support did you receive?
Yeah, so, you know, we are a company that is really based on the idea that we want people to be able to feel supported to do their best work. It's actually not just, you know, doing this because it's good for people. It's also doing it because, like, when you make people feel supported, it's actually really good for business too. And so, you know, when I went through this, I absolutely had the option to take a full medical leave, and Facebook has definitely gives generous medical leaves. I decided to continue working because, you know, I thought I would really go crazy if I was for 5 months in a bed with nothing to do. And when I talked to my managers, really what happened was like really trying to understand what I needed to be able to continue to do my role despite the situation. And we quickly figured out a plan. You know, I was going to do a lot over video conference. As I said, you know, I think remote work is in our future. So like that allowed me to early. And also like really trying to figure out like what were the key things that I still wanted to show up for, so that my career, I would feel like my career was still progressing. So just to give you a concrete thing, every half we give as business owners a big presentation to Mark Zuckerberg about the state of our business. And usually it's all in person. And I asked if I could give that presentation from my bed. And I was able to do that. There's a very epic picture where you see this big boardroom style of like a lot of like exec and me lying down in my bed with like presenting my pitch. But you know, after the end of that, everyone like clapped because they thought it was pretty awesome that I had managed to make it work. And I hesitate every time I talk about that because, you know, I realize what a privilege this is, and not all women work in companies that are so supportive. And I really want to acknowledge that. But I think it's also important to tell these stories to show companies that when you support women like me in these critical times, then we can continue growing our careers. We're motivated to stay in the business. We're motivated to make it work both at home and at the office. And ultimately, it's good because you end up with women in leadership position instead of women who have to get out of the workplace because they don't feel supported. So I do think it's important. And we're seeing it during this time. You know, you asked what Facebook is doing. During this time in particular, we have seen women really struggle with the challenges of childcare given the pandemic, and also taking care sometimes of their aging parents who have more needs in a pandemic. And so we've put in place new mechanism, which we call COVID leaves, where you can take up to 50 days of paid leave to take care of your children, to take care of your family. And we think that has been incredibly helpful for women who may have considered actually just giving up
giving up, right? Yeah.
And getting out of the workplace to feel supported and feel like they could accommodate the needs of their work and of their homes.
Well, and I think it's so important to really focus on the kind of support that employers provide women, because, you know, you're a major breadwinner in your family. And so I don't know what the options may look like for you just to quit working, but you clearly didn't decide to do that, and clearly needed the support from your employer while you continue to work. And you're still working, you're a working mom, your daughter is here and she's doing great, as I understand. But what does it mean? What does it look like now to be a working mom, especially at your level at Facebook, to be a key executive at Facebook, balancing everything that you have to balance, being a working mom, balancing home and work? What does that really look like for you? What are kind of the daily things? And now in the midst of a pandemic, my goodness, right? To add all of the pressure on top of the existing pressures. But what does that really look like for you? And how are you doing as a working mom? How do you balance it? How do you maintain your sanity and kind of keep everything in focus while you're trying to do so many things at the same time?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm glad you mentioned this idea of like women not always having the flexibility to leave their job. And in our case with my husband, you know, I was clearly making more money than he was. And I was also much more career driven than he was, honestly. And so happened when this pregnancy happened, you know, my mom could stay for 3 months, but then she had to go back, immigration rules, and so my husband decided to quit his job to make sure that I was supported until the end of the pregnancy, and we thought he would go back afterwards. And it turns out he loved being a stay-at-home dad. He really found his passion, and that has been a huge source of support. And honestly, there's many days where I don't know how I would make it work without a really supportive husband, which is why every time we talk about giving support to moms, I always remind companies that we also need to give support to dads to be able to be dads and to be able to be supportive. So Facebook actually gives the same amount of maternity leave and paternity leave to moms and dads, and I think that's incredibly important, so that first, like, we see a lot of men around us in leadership position who are taking their 4 months of leave, and like that sets a good example for everyone, so that women don't feel like if they take their full leaves they're going to fall behind because everyone is doing it. But that also allows for, you know, the dads to step up and allow you know, women who really want to like focus a lot on their career as well to feel like their home is still, you know, like going the way they want it to go. So that has been a huge help. And then the other thing on, you know, really figuring out how to do it all the thing I was telling you before this call, the sentence I really like, and I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was behind it. She's behind so much brilliance, but she said, you know, you can have it all, but you just can't have it all at the same time. And really what I try to do is organize my time so that there's clear times where my work is going to take priority, where it's crunch time, we're launching a big product, and clear times where, you know, I'm going to be really focused on the home. And that, you know, separation can even be within a day, like where, you know, I'm going to focus for an hour in the evening where there's going to be absolutely nothing distracting me from building fairy potions with my daughter to do. And I really believe that actually realizing that every time I work, I'm missing out on time with her has made me so much more effective at work, because it's such a strong motivator to be very efficient with what you have to do at work so that you can go spend more time with her. And so It's been a good forcing function for me to figure out what matters most to me, how to spend my time, how to make like quality time and not just quantity, because like I can't afford, you know, I'm not going to be the mom who spends like, you know, 10 hours a day with our daughter. I'm not going to be able to do school drop-offs every day. So every time I have these moments, I make them very special and I focus on quality more than quantity.
That's awesome. And let me just remind the audience that we can take questions. We're having a conversation right now, but we'd love to take your questions. If you have some questions of Fidji, just put them in the comments. We'd love to take them. Again, this is Fidji Simo. She is the vice president of Facebook app. We're talking about motherhood, being a working mom, what it looks like when your pregnancies don't necessarily go as you expected. How do you make it through that? What are the support things that you need? So many topics. And if there's some questions you have on your mind, then certainly we'd like to hear from you. So please put them in the comments and we'll take them during the session. So Fidji, just to pick up on that though, you know, you're a woman who happens to be a business leader. You're a woman who happens to be a mom, but you're one person. You're not, you know, 2 or 3 separate people, right? Yeah. How does being a mom help you be a better leader? And how does being a business leader that you are help you be a better mom?
Such a great question. You know, I find that if we made the barriers between all these sides of us a little bit more porous, we would be in a much better place, because I do think there is so much from what happens at home that we can bring to our leadership and vice versa. I'll tell you one of the big things that come to mind. You know, when I've thought really hard about like a big part of what I want my mission in life to be, a big thing for me is shining a light on the magic of other people. And I actually think that doing that in business and doing that with my daughter has had very similar properties, where, you know, when you look at your daughter, it's really not about projecting what you want her to be, or, you know, all the things that the aspiration you have for her. It's really about looking at this individual in all of her specialness and figuring out what makes her magical, what makes her really have like this awesome personality, and how do I shine a light on that? How do I see myself as a mom, like, you know, really figuring out how to get the best magic out of her. And I do very much the same in my team. You know, I always say, like, when I bring people to my team, I always spend a lot of time not thinking about like which box do I put them in, which weakness do I need to overcome with them, but really like what makes them special, what is the one thing that is like really unique about them, and then unleash that. And so I do think these things are apply like very much across like the home and the work. And I think if we treated the office with as much love and care as we treat our homes, they would be nicer places to work too. And so I do think I do, and I do think it comes naturally, more naturally to women leaders to bring that side and to. I know it's a complete cliche to say women are more nurturing, and I don't like that because there are some women who have like no intention of being nurturing, and that's absolutely okay. But I do think that for the ones that have that side, like bringing it to the office can actually provide a lot of safety and a lot of growth to the teams that they lead.
Well, I think you're right. And I definitely would say I share a lot of those same thoughts. And I would also say that, when you've got a lot on your plate, it really forces you to focus on what's really most important. So I know for me, I find that I become less distracted with kind of minor things and try to really nail the things that are really most critical.
Yep.
Because you don't have a lot of extra time to really think about multiple things. You have just enough time to think about the things that matter the most, and how do you carve out time during the day to do a little bit of both of those things or all those things, including taking care of yourself, right? Which is really important. Which I still have to work out today, so that's a good reminder. So thank you. This has been a tough time. With the pandemic, we talked about that a little. I talked about it a little bit earlier. I'd love to hear more about what you and what the Facebook app has been doing to respond to supporting parents during this time. I mean, this has been, of all of the people that have been so stressed about COVID-19, I think maybe I'm a little biased, but I think it's been the pregnant moms, the new moms. Certainly, we've had to be so concerned about people that are immunocompromised, the elderly. I mean, that has also, those are, populations that have also been incredibly overwhelmed with this pandemic. But for our work at the March of Dimes, we've been hearing from, so many women who have really just been desperately afraid of what it must be to be pregnant during this time, looking for support from anywhere and everywhere, including the March of Dimes, for how to manage through this, how to make sure babies and newborns are safe, delivering in the midst of a pandemic. And then, of course, now the big challenge that a lot of parents are facing, moms, dads, spouses, partners, and others, is how do I keep my child safe at school? Or how do I keep my toddler safe at childcare, right? And how do I make sure they're safe? How do I make sure that they don't bring something home to anyone else in the family, especially an elderly family? Are there some things that you all have learned at Facebook about what it looks like to really support parents through this really challenging and very unique time?
Absolutely. So I talked a lot about the COVID leaves because essentially they give a lot of flexibilities with up to 50 days that you can take, and then more if you have like someone in your family who's sick. And that flexibility is everything for women who really need to figure out how to adjust to this new reality. So that has been very big for us in terms of our employees. But what we've also tried to do is really provide help inside the product. So we've seen an incredible growth of parenting groups because in a lot of these groups, parents get together to help each other and find advice and support. And just to give you a sense, like just in March, we saw 2,000 homeschooling groups being created with 1.5 million people joining them just in the month of March. So that's really that becomes an incredible resource for parents who are trying to figure out what to do in this crazy situation. The other thing that we've done is actually help the educators themselves, because they find themselves in this very tricky position of trying to keep the kids safe, trying to keep the family safe, trying to keep themselves safe. And so what we've done is created an educator hub with basically resources for educators on how to do that, which is also obviously helpful to parents. And then the last thing is that we are starting to tackle mental health issues much more directly. We think that this pandemic is putting such a strain on so many people, including the ones that were already struggling the most. And so we have in honor of Mental Health Awareness Day, we have also started a destination that people can go to inside the Facebook app to find mental health resources and figure out how to take care of themselves.
That's so amazing. And I know just everyone's staying connected. I mean, I can't think of when we've all had to isolate at home if we didn't at least have Facebook to help us connect with other people while we're in our homes trying to stay safe. Gosh, I don't know where we'd be. So those are resources that have been incredible. You know, we've gotten a few questions from the audience as that we were hoping. So maybe we could go to that really quickly. Some really great questions. Apparently, people are very interested in hearing about this relationship with you and your husband, with you as the breadwinner and this amazing guy who is the stay-at-home dad. And so we have a question that says, it's so amazing that we can celebrate a nuclear family that isn't always seen. A powerful mom and a dad who wants to stay at home. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship your husband has been able to form with your daughter because of this family dynamic? That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so incredibly special because she has two very different relationships with each of us. And, she goes to my husband for so much of the practical day-to-day stuff. And it's so funny because, I mean, the other day, I think I forget what it was. She was asking me for something really practical. She was asking for something really practical and her dad wasn't hearing. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get for you, sweetie. And she's like, Mom, you don't know how to do that. So it's like she absolute like gender roles reversed. And I was like, I absolutely know how to do that. But I think, she's developed this relationship where dad handles like the home, he handles the schedule, he handles what goes into the backpack, etc. While with me, it's much more like the creative imagination stuff. Like I'm an artist in my spare time, so we spend a lot of time like talking and where she asks a lot of questions and doing projects together and things like that. And again, I know what a privilege this is because like when you free up a lot of the day-to-day tactical stuff, moms get to do some of the cool stuff as well,
Yes.
And I think that's that relationship has been incredible with my husband because he's totally comfortable with that being the dynamic. And it's so interesting because while he is completely comfortable, the rest of the world still has a very hard time internalizing that,
Exactly.
We were on the beach in Hawaii having a vacation, and this mom comes by and basically we start talking about our kids who are playing on the beach, and I tell her, oh, actually my husband is the one who is stay at home and takes care of her. And she looks at me and she's like, is she okay? And I'm just like, why wouldn't she be? I mean, that is fine. Or like, at the grocery store, it would be like, oh, dad is babysitting today. And my husband was like, well, you're going to see me every day.
Every day, right?
Babysitting.
Boy, not working mom shaming, was she? Oh my goodness. Wow.
A kid, it's not called
yes.
when you're the dad. So it's been, it has led to plenty of funny conversation, like going to story time at the library and being just with moms and so the instructor forgetting that there is a dad there, so
right.
I do think that as a society we still have so much to do to make it okay. I'm seeing a lot of progress, but when I look at a lot of the senior women that we have at Facebook, I see very similar dynamics where like the husbands have stepped up, and whether they work or not, like regardless, they have stepped up and they do a lot of the work at home. And I do think we need to make it more okay and even celebrate that even more. So yes.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And we have another question. In fact, it's one that touches on something you mentioned about your art, because there was another question that said in an article with the Wall Street Journal from earlier this year, you mentioned how you've used art as a creative outlet or hobby. Can you talk a bit about what it means to lean into creating art and what that means for your daughter? And you talked a little bit about those are sharing moments with your daughter, but that's also been an expressive outlet for you too, and probably helped you cope a great deal.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, um, the idea of art and creation is so much about being able to shape a future that you want, and having that in your hands and starting from nothing and having like an artistic object at the end of it, whatever it is. It's a fantastic process of realizing that you can affect your reality, which is sometimes all we need. And so I have this ritual with my daughter where we make magic wands together. I'm very much into magic, and the thing that I try to tell her is that each magic wand has a power, and she gets to decide which power we're going to build. And I'm trying to teach her that in life you get to create your own tools to like cope with situations, and nothing is something you can't handle. You just have to find the right magic wand. And so I do think that like introducing her to art and introducing her to these notions as a bonding activity has been something really, really special for us. And now she definitely wants to be a witch for Halloween. So
No, how appropriate, right? And use her magic wands. That's so great. We have another question too, and please keep them coming. These are some great questions, by the way. Um, there's another question about how do you deal with people who doubt your abilities?
That's a really great, heavy question. um, you know, First, I needed to deal with the fact that I was doubting my own abilities. I think it starts with, I was a kid coming from a family of fishermen from the south of France where no one had ever graduated from even high school. Like being the head of the Facebook app was not, in the book. And so I had to overcome my own imposter syndrome. And the way I overcame it was not by telling myself, "Oh yes, you're so awesome," waking up one morning and having a revelation. It was more by actually really being grateful and telling myself, "Okay, well, if I've been given this opportunity, there has to be a reason, and I'm going to rise to it," and really trying to do my best every day. And then when I encounter people who doubt my abilities, I try to focus on the fact that it's actually more about them than it is about me. So much of what we get from people, the negativity we get from people, has more to say about them than it has to say about you. And I try to glimpse at, is there an underlying thing that they're getting at that could be useful to me? If they doubt my ability because I haven't done a great job presenting an idea, that's good feedback for me. And I try to always understand like the things that can make myself better, but in a growth mindset and not in a mindset of like really losing confidence in myself. We can all do better. We can all be better. And I actually think this is great that we can spend a lifetime learning. And so I always try to see it as like, what can I do better? And like try to not spend as much time as I used to when I was a little less confident, beating myself up for that.
I think that's great. That's great advice. There's another great question too, which I think is really good. What is some of the best advice you've either gotten from a mentor or a manager? And along with that, can you also talk about what it means to be a mentor to women?
Oh, I could talk about that for so long. Let me start with that. I think we need to be very careful with words because a lot of people pretend that they're mentors to women. And what they do is really grab coffee with them and give them a bunch of well-meaning advice. And that's great. That's a good start. But what women really need is actually sponsors. It's people who put their butt on the line to open doors for them. And that's very different. And sadly, I know many women with mentors, and I know very few with sponsors. I know very few who are going to be in a room where we decide on promotions and really bang the table and saying, no, I don't think you've really assessed that woman properly. Like, let's reconsider. when I think about what I want to do to pay it forward and mentor women and sponsor them, really what has given me so much energy is actually not just giving them advice, but really figuring out like what are the opportunities that these women are not getting, because sadly most of the leadership of our companies are led by men, and really trying to figure out how can I use the fact that now I'm in a leadership position to open these doors. How can I like make the right introductions, put that woman on the radar, and make sure that they get a chance. And I think that's much more important than just mentorship. As for the best advice that I've been given, you know, I think it's actually related. I'm a very big fan of Diane von Furstenberg, who has become a friend over the years. And one of the pieces of advice she's given me is actually like, if you really want to have impact on the world, just open doors every day. And she has this ritual where every morning she figures out what is one introduction she can make that can open doors for someone. And I think this is such a good tool, because sometimes we think about best advice as like, how can that help me right now? But I've found that if you start from a place of generosity and really opening doors without like waiting for anything in return, it comes back to you tenfold. And the best things that have happened to me usually have to do with me having, you know, connected people in some way, made like open doors in some way, and then like that, you know, these people wanting to help me in return without me asking for anything. And so I believe in the power of connection, and that's why I think it was the best advice for me.
I think that's really great. You know, I want to ask another question about that, because I think one of the things that we need to consider is, and I definitely think women in leadership roles need to set a great example of what that looks like to be a great sponsor, and to really advocate internally for women. But if women really are going to succeed, I think you'd agree, we need men to be doing it as well, and companies overall, really starting with the board of directors all the way down through management. What would you say, or where do you think we are in this country and maybe globally in terms of companies really committing to create the right workplaces for women to succeed, to excel, to take on leadership roles? How committed do you think companies generally are to this, and what more should companies be doing to make sure that women do have those opportunities the way you've had in your career?
You know, I think there's commitment, but it's just too slow. And at the pace at which we're going, we're going to see some progress, but I think we still need to go a lot faster. I am starting to see a lot of progress around men wanting to participate in that conversation and realizing that growing diverse talent, whether it's women or underrepresented minorities, growing diverse talent is actually a key part of any leader's role at this point. You know, like if you don't have a diverse team, you have a worse team. That's very simple. The data is there to back that up. So if you're not creating diverse teams, that means you're not a particularly great leader. That means, you know, you could be doing a better job. And
Absolutely.
I think this data is starting to resonate, and I think we are starting to see more men entering the conversation and really putting themselves out there to help women. You know, I'll tell you, I've certainly benefited in my career from men opening doors for me. Like, there aren't a lot of women in leadership position at Facebook. And so it took, you know, like Will Cathcart, who currently leads WhatsApp, used to be my former manager. And he's the one who told me, like, you know, what are we gonna do so that you can take my job in 2 years? And we put a plan in place. And sure enough, I got his job in 2 years. And I think, you know, it takes men who already have the credibility, already have the power to say, I'm going to use a little bit of that to not only do the right thing, but also to like build the right teams. So I do think it's changing. I'm impatient in nature, and I just wish it was going faster.
I wish they were going faster too. Are there some things that you would, you wish you knew as a younger woman before the baby, just as you were starting your career, that you would want to tell your younger self today, so that you'd be maybe even better prepared for what you were going to encounter over the course of your career? What are some of those things that you wish you had known back then?
That's a great question. I think, some message I would tell myself is really, you are stronger than you give yourself credit for. And what I mean by that is like, when I look back, I think like any of these things were truly terrible. And at the time I thought I could not get myself through them. Like, I remember like, this appointment where the doctor said your cervix is dilating at like 4 months and you have to go have surgery to place a piece of plastic in it to hold the baby in place tomorrow. I mean, I looked at my husband and it was more than I thought I could handle. Like 5 months of strict bed rest was more than I thought I could handle. A chronic illness to follow that was also
Right.
I thought I could handle. Like endometriosis, where I needed to have surgery after that. Like, it's just been a lot. And I'm not stronger than anyone else. We just as women, we get it done, especially when it comes to our babies. We certainly get it done for that.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it.
I just feel like I wish I had known that I was gonna make it through and it was gonna be okay, even when it was incredibly hard, because we have such deep reserves of resilience, and I wish we didn't have to like go into them that much, for sure. But I think, I haven't met a woman who isn't strong. So yeah.
That's exactly right. One of the questions that has come in is, because of this interesting dynamic in your family and you being such an incredible role model for your daughter, what do you need when you look at your daughter and you see where you are now in your life and your career? What do you hope? The question is, what do you hope that your daughter grows up to be? Do you have any aspirations for her? And what do you hope that she gets from you?
It's interesting because growing up, I so wanted to have a better life than my parents, and I was incredibly ambitious. So if you had asked me at that time, what do you hope for your daughter, I would have told you, I hope she goes to Harvard. I hope she list, and the reality is, as I was saying earlier, what I found in big parts through meeting a lot of people and coaching them and managing them is that it's so fantastic that we live in a world where people have such different kinds of magic. And so the main thing that I hope for her is that she finds what makes her really unique and what she loves, and she gets to do that all the time. And so what I'm trying to prepare her for is really like letting her shine her light. I think the thing that would make me the saddest, about her life would be if I felt like she could never be quite herself and she could never really shine the light and do the things that she was born to do in this world. And because, I definitely believe she came for a reason. So
Absolutely.
I think that little girl's on a mission. I just don't know what it is yet, but I hope she figures it out. And I just want to be there to like show her that she will always have our support, and she will, we can always shine a light on our magic. I'm going to stop because I'm going to start tearing up, and that's
oh no, we don't want you to do that. Well, you're giving her all the magic wands, so she's getting all those tools so she can be whoever she wants to be, and when she grows up. And if she wants to be just like her mom, that would be perfectly fine, because you're pretty awesome. We're coming to the end of this session, and I can just tell you, Fida, you're amazing, and you're a great role model for so many women, not just at Facebook, but everywhere. And it's easy to look. One of the observations I have about you, it's easy to look on the outside of someone, see their career and what they look like and how smart they are and how beautiful they are and how articulate they are, and say, wow, they've got it all going on. and have a great life. And then when they tell their story about pain and challenges they've had and different obstacles that they have overcome, you know, it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that there's nobody on the face of earth that hasn't met a challenge or an obstacle. We all do. The issue is how we respond to it. And the issue is, are we going to allow those things to keep us down, or we're going to get back up? And Fiji, you've kind of shown us as an executive that you've faced many obstacles, both in your professional life as well as your personal life with your personal health, the health of your child. And you've overcome them. And my hope and my wish for you is that you will continue to do that. And my hope and wish for so many women that are hearing the story is that you allow that to inspire you as well, to overcome everything, including COVID-19. We can beat this too, right? we will eventually. So I want to say thank you, Fiji, for joining today and for sharing all of your story with the March of Dimes and our community and so many others that I think have joined us today. This has been a great It Starts With Mom Live from California. We're glad to be bi-coastal today and be sharing coast to coast, everything that's fantastic going on at the March of Dimes. And it's really important to elevate these kinds of conversations with women, talking about our families, talking about what's important to us and our health and our babies and the next generation as well. We want to continue to be a really reliable source to many women, to be there for you, to provide the support and the comfort and the help that you need at all times of your life, especially when you're starting or expanding your family. I'm going to put in a shameless plug, if you don't mind, to help us keep these kinds of things going. These are so important. These conversations are amazing. We hope you've enjoyed it. The only way that we're able to do these kinds of things is with your incredible help. That's the only way the March of Dimes survives. And as you know, for every nonprofit on the face of the earth, this has not been the easiest time. So we want to ask you, if you're willing to, and if you're able to, make a donation, give to the March of Dimes, support the cause for healthy moms and strong babies, and I invite you to make a donation, support all these critical efforts by going to the event website, which is linked on the page here below, so you can hopefully easily find it. And from all of us here at March of Dimes, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here for the It Starts With Mom Live. We want to thank our partner Cisco for being such a great partner on this, and of course all our national sponsors for supporting this activity. And hopefully we'll be doing this again soon, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Thanks, Fiji.
Thanks, Stacey.
My mom is incredible because as a nurse, she's one of the smartest people I know. But as a mom, she's one of the funniest and most selfless.
I appreciate how much she was able to live her life as an example to her daughters.
A big thank you to my mom for all she did raising 4 teenagers.
So what makes my mom so incredible is her tenacity and her fearlessness.
Now that she's older, she lives with me, and it is my privilege to take care of her in the same way that she took care of all of us.
The best advice she's ever given me is to not take things personally and to only remember the good things that people say about you and never remember the negative things, because that's what holds you back.
Her insatiable love of learning and of giving back.
You're doing the most important thing, which is loving your kids each and every day, and that's what matters at the end of the day. So thank you, Mom, for the great advice, and thank you to all those other superhero moms out there.